love your work, and I'm David Cadeby. I decided last December that I would be taking this December off of the podcast in terms of making new episodes. I like to give myself some space toward the end of the year so that I can recharge, so I can think about things from a higher level, come into the new year with a fresh perspective. So I am reaching into the vault of more than 200 episodes, pulling out some of my favorites, especially the ones that are good for this time of year. Now, what we have here is a fantastic conversation with Sean Stephenson, and it takes on a special significance this time around, because though what you're going to hear is the only conversation that I ever had with Sean Stephenson, I always felt a special connection with him, which I'm sure many people did. So when I discovered, though, that he was born exactly one day after me to the day, it seemed fitting. It helped strengthen that sense of a connection. Now, when this episode debuted, my mother sent me a text message. I still have it. She said, "Listening to interview with Sean Stephenson on my walk." She always went for walks every morning. "Very good. I was struck at the very beginning that he was born the day after you, and what a different experience his parents were thrust into." Now, what my mom is referring to is the fact that when Sean Stephenson was born, he wasn't expected to make it through the night. He was born with brittle bone disorder, and throughout his life, he suffered hundreds of bone fractures. And even as an adult, his limbs were twisted. He never grew larger than 3 feet tall, and he was confined to a wheelchair. In July, I rushed from Medellin to Scottsdale to be by my mother's bedside, as she had suffered a brain hemorrhage, just spontaneous brain hemorrhage from something called an AVM, arterial vascular malformation. Apparently she was born with it. And as you may have heard on other episodes, she later passed away. She was in a coma that entire time. Now, about a month and a half after my mother passed away, on August 29th, I was still in Scottsdale, where it happens Sean Stephenson also lived. I was sitting in a cafe, and I took a break from writing to open up Instagram, and I was instantly saddened more than I already was, because the first photo in my feed was of Sean, and on the photo it said, "In Memoriam, Sean Stephenson, 1979-2019. His wife, Mindy, had posted it that morning. When Sean Stephenson was born, he wasn't expected to make it through the night, but he did make it through 40 years. And in those years, through his work as a therapist and through his writing and public speaking, Sean inspired a ton of people, and I was one of them. And when I returned to my parents' house from that cafe visit, I saw one of Sean's books sitting on the shelf. It's called Get Off Your Butt, with 1 T. Apparently my mother had bought it after hearing Sean on the show, so I guess he inspired her too. Listening to this conversation in preparation for writing this intro this time around was even more powerful than it was the first time around. I always try to get a superpower from my guests, and listening again helped me realize that I had kind of internalized some of the lessons that I learned from Sean the first time around. So, for example, mostly that Sean has this way of helping you realize the limiting beliefs that you put on yourself, the ways that you tell yourself that you're the victim, the scapegoats that you create, or whom you can blame for your shortcomings and your failures. And I always felt there was something kind of messed up about that. Like, Sean had a tough hand dealt to him in life. And so now I feel better about my own situation. I mean, it sounds kind of messed up, but it works. And now that Sean is gone, this conversation serves as another reminder. It's a reminder to make the most of each day that you're here on this earth. Sean did that. I am trying. One fun thing I didn't realize until I listened to this conversation again. In this conversation, Sean recommends the book One Small Step. One Small Step is, of course, the book by Dr. Robert Maurer, who you heard on episode 187, and that episode is a hit. It is also worth listening to or re-listening to, I had discovered Dr. Mauer's work through another channel, and I didn't even notice that Sean had mentioned the book, which made me realize that there's so much valuable knowledge in this giant Love Your Work catalog that has built up over the last 4 years. So even listening to each of these conversations several times, there's always something new to discover. So if you're craving new episodes throughout the month, try re-listening to some of your old favorites as we head into the new year. But for now, you can re-listen to this one. Here is the late, great Sean Stephenson. So I noticed on your website that it says that you were born to rid the world of insecurity. So how did that become such an important issue to you?
Well, I grew up in a unique container that medically is considered as having osteogenesis imperfecta. And so I'm only about 3 feet tall. I'm in a wheelchair. And I'm stared at every single day, have been my whole life. And that brought up a ton of insecurities. Am I normal? Are people going to like me? Do people think I'm ugly? Would a woman ever love me? Would somebody want to be my friend? Would somebody ever hire me? And all these insecurities kind of were swirling around inside of me most of my childhood. Now, with that said, I also had a personality that was using humor and some forms of charisma and playfulness that on the outside, I might have looked like I didn't have anything challenging me emotionally. But on the inside, I was still dealing with the weight energetically of having this condition and wondering what my life was going to be like as I continued on. And through all those experiences, I started doing research from about 19 years old on. So over almost 20 years now with the research on how does one work through their insecurities? How does somebody, can they really get rid of them? Or can we just silence them? How does it work? So I studied every bit of information I could about insecurities, and I was quite surprised to find that insecurity has not been heavily researched. That, there's all kinds of research around phobias and mental disorders and depression, but there wasn't somebody really tackling the project of insecurity. There were a few authors here and there, but not as a major thrust. And I found that almost all the social ills that we have in our society come out of insecurity. Everything from war to eating disorders to bullying. These are all byproducts of our insecurities running the show. And I just became curious, and now it's become an obsession of mine. And my obsession is to rid this world of insecurity, because I do see it as the root of all evil. I think when a person doesn't feel like they're enough, they go and do stupid stuff to try to prove and overcompensate, just to live life in that space. It's not necessary. Everybody's got insecurities. And one of my mentors just kept pushing on me until I realized that he was right, that I needed to tackle a global issue, and that issue is to tackle insecurity. So, a lot of people will ask me like, well, are you willing to work on, depression, or what do you think about saving the environment, or what about kids and all, on Ritalin and this, that, and the other? And I'm like, look, you have to pick an area that you want to put all your time and research into. And that's why I chose insecurity, because I found if we can get to that root, a lot of these other presenting problems can disappear.
Can we break that down a little bit? Some of the things that insecurity causes, like you were talking about wars or bullying, things like that. Can we break down a couple of those examples?
Sure. So first, let's break down what an insecurity is.
Okay.
Insecurity is a feeling that you're not enough. You're not tall enough, pretty enough, smart enough, wealthy enough, educated enough, experienced enough, I don't know, strong enough, fit enough, thin enough. I mean, just the list goes on and on and on of the feelings that people feel like they're not enough. And when you feel like you're not enough, you go in one of two directions. You either, in the negative directions, that is, you either feel inferior and you curl up in a ball and you become tremendously shy and you don't interact with society and you disappear, or you go the opposite direction and you overcompensate and you puff your chest out and you feel not inferior, but rather superior. And that's just as dangerous, if not more, to then that's almost like a form of bullying to everybody around you to try to make sure that they don't know the truth. You know, you're trying to be the first on the scene to be scary so that nothing scares you. And it doesn't work. Neither inferior nor superior complexes ever end well for us. And so what insecurity does is it depends on the topic, but let's say with our appearance, if you don't feel like you're handsome enough, good looking enough, then that can cause a myriad of problems like becoming addicted to plastic surgery. And we see this a lot amongst females and homosexual males, that they become addicted to plastic surgery. Now, it's not to say it doesn't affect all of us. It can, but that's where it can grow into an epidemic. It shows up in business when somebody feels like they're never safe, that they don't have enough money to feel safe. And then they go out and they make a ton of money. And no matter how much money they make, it's never enough. And I'm all about striving and wanting more. But when you come from a place of insecurity, that's chasing more from a place of less. And when you come from abundance and security and believing in yourself and knowing that you have what it takes, then that's wanting more from a place of more. That whatever you achieve, you're proud of, you're happy with, and you feel it's beautiful and you're grateful. And so insecurities can cause people to overcompensate and just max out on their credit cards, trying to have the nicest cars and clothes and home just to try to prove to everybody they're enough. We see, like I said, in plastic surgery. I mean, it shows up in people's interactions in their job, where they might have a intimidating presence because deep down inside, they don't feel like they could ever command enough respect by being nice and compassionate. So it manifests itself both globally and on a microcosm level in our daily choices.
So, I mean, it sounds like as we go throughout our day, there's going to be, we have our own insecurities, but then we can also recognize them in other people if we're paying attention too. That there might be a boss or a coworker or a family member that acts in a certain way, and that insecurity is being manifest in a certain way, that you have to kind of look a few layers deep to be able to see it. How do you do that?
Well, I don't ever recommend pointing out somebody's insecurity to them because unless a person is willing to acknowledge and take responsibility for how they're behaving, just pointing it out to them is probably not going to help the matter. Telling somebody that they're being insecure is going to make them more than likely be more insecure in that moment. Rather, working with an individual when you see a behavior that you feel is coming from insecurity, by talking to them about what they're feeling, by asking them if there are any other options or choices that they might have in their behavior, see if they're willing to be flexible in their behavior. But there's another concept called you spot it, you got it, where you don't want to be too intense with somebody and say, you have this insecurity, because you're probably getting a reflection of one of your own. And I'm very well trained to spot insecurities. I believe that insecurity actually, to get a little scientific or woo-woo, depending on how you look at it, I think there's a frequency to insecurity. I think we can hear it in our tonality, in our voice. I think we can hear it in our laugh, an insecure laugh versus a real laugh. And it's something that I kind of just check in with my body and my gut when I'm observing somebody. And instead of pointing it out and attacking them, it's like, why do you have this insecurity? But just be vigilant and see what you could do to rectify the matter without having to, stir up the pain per se. And I also noticed that when I'm interacting with people, if some bit of their insecurity pisses me off, it irritates me, it's a definite reflection of myself. If I just notice it and observe it and I can stay calm and I don't even have to address it, I just see it for what it is, then it's probably not an act of insecurity in me.
Yeah, so it sounds like in ourselves we can discover our own insecurities through these little clues that we might miss.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes when you're not willing to do something or you find yourself getting very irritable or aggressive in your day-to-day behaviors, that almost always can be traced back to an insecurity. And I've gone through and I pull back the layers on myself. There's only 2 times that I pull back the layers on insecurity. 1 is when I'm working on myself, or 2 is when somebody has invited me in to work on them with them as a client of mine and they're paying me and we have that agreement that you've come to me to work on this and we're tackling this specific issue. Outside of that, if I go anywhere near peeling back the layers of somebody's insecurity, it's never going to go well. But with myself, I'll just peel it back and I'm like, okay, you know that you're being irritated and activated, so there's something here to look at. And then once I can get to that place, there's something here to look at, then I go to the next place is, where do you not feel you are enough or capable? And then that will lead me into a direction. And then I'll ask myself questions like, who told you that you had to feel this way? Who told you that you have to act this way? Is this really how you want to be acting and feeling? Or is this maybe a program that somewhere along your childhood was installed outside of you, from the outside world, from media conditioning, parents, former lovers, that it may be old programming that's not serving you anymore. And I will constantly be doing a scan of myself energetically, emotionally. As my day goes on, I will almost run diagnostics, if you will, to say, like, where am I not feeling whole and complete? Where am I not feeling strong and capable? And I just get to work on it. And I have to maybe let go of a limiting belief. I came across a limiting belief not too long ago. I was really upset because I didn't feel like I was doing a good job in marketing my business. And then I got under the hood and I was like, well, why don't you feel like you did a good job? And then it got to, well, I'm just not a good marketer. And I'm like, okay, well, has there been a time where you felt like you did market well? I'm like, yeah. Well, then that doesn't equate with not being a good marketer if you know how to do it. So I kept peeling back. And then finally, I found that I had an issue not with marketing, but with consistency. Because I was constantly dropping the ball on things. And then I went deeper than that, pulled the layers back. And then I found that it came from childhood and that it was an issue that I was repeating the pattern on and later in life. And I just had to ask myself, is this something you want to keep bringing into your future? Could you develop a loving, fun relationship with consistency where it's not painful, where it's not a punishment? And I just had to do the work on myself. And it took some time, but now the word consistency brings up a pleasurable experience in me, and I'm rebuilding my relationship to it. But it's because I went and did my own diagnostic work and started taking ownership for my behavior.
It's interesting that it sounds like it started with a thing that you had a belief about yourself that was like that was your state. You're just not a good marketer.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we like to have something to blame. We're like, well, this isn't happening because I'm not good at this. Then we feel like we're off the hook.
A scapegoat.
A scapegoat, right. As opposed to saying, well, wait a minute, that's not, let's look a little closer into it. And at the end of the day, I love the work of Louise Hay. She talks about how every problem comes down to not loving yourself enough, psychologically speaking. And I totally agree. I find that whenever I'm withholding love from myself, I'm allowing my insecurities to run the show.
And so if you have this belief, oh, I'm not a good marketer, then you were able to peel that back into, okay, first of all, you're able to see that that's not true and you're able to dissect that. So the next step after having this belief about yourself that's perhaps false is then to I'm trying to break down how you went through that progression, because that was really good.
So from the marketer, I realized, well, there were times where I have been good at marketing, so I gotta stop blaming marketing. And then I'm like, well, where do you really feel like you're a mess? And then it was like, well, I feel like I'm a mess whenever I have to be consistent. If I can do something one time, I'm fine with it. If I have to do it consistent. But then I found times when I'm actually very consistent, but it's because I'm choosing to like those things that I'm doing. And so I just peel back the layers to figure out, like, underneath it all, what is this really all about? And for me, that whole thing about marketing came down to the fact that, like I said, it was a childhood issue. For me, it was peeling back the layers and going, I don't feel like I ever had the privilege of being consistent as a child because I had so many injuries. And I would start a project and then I'd have to stop it because I would get injured. And so at some point, I created the limiting story that I'm not capable of being consistent. And I had to rewrite that program. I had to rewrite that story in my head and say, that may have been what you felt like when you were 8 years old, but you're not 8 anymore. Now you're 38. So you got to deal with this and rewrite this story in your head.
So to reiterate that, then you had this belief that you couldn't be consistent, and then you track that back to your childhood. And to clarify that, I mean, you've broken bones hundreds of times, right? So you were getting injured very often, and so that was perhaps a source of why you felt that you didn't get a chance to be consistent.
But I'm not the only one that has a sad little story about consistency, right? Because there's so many people out there that, when they were a little kid, their father or mother was in the military, and they were moved constantly, and they didn't feel like they ever got consistency because their parents kept moving them. I mean, some people might have an illness, or like everybody could have a story about why they may not be able to be consistent. Because, I mean, we know as human beings, it's very easy to get distracted. It's very easy to quit doing something, even if it's working, whether that's eating right, exercising, saving money, whatever it may be. And so I'm always questioning people. Look at the story that is generating pain behind your relationship to certain things like consistency. And when you peel back the layers, you're going to find some interesting things.
And you were able to look at times when you were consistent. And then did you just find that you were more consistent than you thought, or did you actually then give yourself a chance to build up consistency as a skill to improve your...
A little bit of both. Yeah, a little bit of both. So the brain really likes to find examples that disprove your limiting beliefs. So if you have a limiting belief that you suck at some area of life, like being consistent, then you have to get to work and find, well, but where are you consistent? Well, I brush my teeth every night. Okay, so you did that. Okay, well, I breathe every day, so I'm consistent there. I eat 3 meals a day, so I'm consistent there. I go to the bathroom several times a day, I'm consistent there. And as you find examples that disprove your limiting belief, then you have to go back to it and say, okay, so then if it's not, then I'm not capable of being consistent. What is it? And then for me, it was, I didn't feel like I had the luxury of being consistent. So I had kind of a pushback energy around that. And I had to rewrite the story and say, consistency is a muscle. For me, I can develop my consistency just like I can develop my biceps. And we all have the ability to condition ourselves to have a new story about whatever it is we're going through.
Yeah, I've done some work on my sort of, I guess they'll call it a consistency muscle. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it was like my planning muscle, or I can't really trace it back to the limiting beliefs that I had. I haven't thought about that yet, but I know like I'm pretty good at planning stuff now. And I think the way that I started was I would like look up a recipe online and I'd say, all right, I need to get all these ingredients, and then I need to get the ingredients, and then you just like slowly, deliberately reread the recipe, or what order am I going to do all this stuff in, and do like a very small thing that's planned.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing you know, you're planning a date, you're planning a vacation, you're planning your whole life years in advance and stuff, because you were able to put these systems in place and build that muscle.
Yeah, so there's two things I want to say about that. One is there's a great book called One Small Step by Robert Moyer, Dr. Robert Moyer. He's a professor at UCLA. It's a great book. I get all my clients to read it. And it talks about the Japanese way of doing things, one step at a time. And the second thing I would say is I have my own little mantra that says, we crave what we give ourselves most. And so if you give yourself positive compliments over and over, you begin to crave that. If you give yourself negative feedback, you begin to crave that. If you give yourself pornography, you crave that. If you give yourself vegetables, you eventually crave that. If you give yourself exercise versus binging on Netflix, whatever you give yourself most is what you end up craving. And so it's because you end up, it's the way it's like you stew in it, right? And the longer you're in the stew, the more you absorb it. And so this is why I'm a big believer that you have to be very careful about the environment you're putting yourself in, because when you're in the environment, you eventually become the environment.
It becomes difficult to even notice the negative self-talk or limiting beliefs that you might have until, maybe you're saying something out loud to a friend and you say, oh, I can't build habits. And then your friend is like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You almost have to have another person there telling you.
Well, there's another thing we can do if we're not sharing out loud like that, which is daily journaling. By journaling, it's an auditing mechanism that lets you see, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What are my fears, my hopes, my fantasies, my dreams, my angers, my upsets, my disappointments? And people have a hard time putting down on paper what's in their head because it makes it real. It shows them, this is swirling around in your head. And so I think most people just like to be oblivious to that because then they don't have to take ownership over it.
And I think that there's something important there that goes along with any sort of, that is a parallel to sort of any creative endeavor, is that before you begin, say, writing in the journal, you can often have these other false beliefs in your brain, like that that you have to commit to doing it a certain amount, or that you have to, that you can't burn it and throw it away when you're done and rip it up, or like you have to give yourself permission to say, okay, I'm going to write it. It might not make sense. I know when I started journaling, it was just a string of random words that weren't even sentences. I had to give myself that permission. And the next thing I know, eventually starts coming out things that make sense.
Well, and perfection gets in the way a lot of us working on ourselves, because some people say, okay, I'm going to journal every day for 365 days in the year. And then on day 7, they can't find their journal. And then they're like, oh, see, I already broke my streak. Screw it. I'm not going to journal ever again. And they leave it because if they can't do it perfectly, then they don't want to do it. But I know I've suffered from that. But I'd rather do something not perfectly and stick with it than do something perfectly and then eventually just drop the ball because life happens. You have to set yourself up to win and be realistic about your rituals.
This ties into like silly, easy habits. Like every morning I get up, first thing I do, I write and publish a 100-word article. Sometimes it takes me 30 seconds. Sometimes it takes me half an hour to write and publish 100-word article. But there's no way that I can fool myself into thinking that I have a reasonable excuse for not being able to write 100 words. Same thing of, when I started going to the gym, it was like, all right, go to the gym these times, these days for 15 minutes. You can go to the gym you just have to go.
Yeah.
And once you're at the gym, you start doing it. It becomes, you have to give yourself that permission.
Because the brain is not wired for us to succeed. The brain is wired for us to survive. And when something is when there's something that's displeasing and it's not pleasurable, the brain's like, stop doing this. Oh, no. This going to this gym thing, you could be sitting on the couch eating high caloric foods right now. Like, what are you doing? But then, like I said, you crave what you give yourself most. Eventually, you do it enough times and the body's like, oh, okay, well, this is pleasurable now. It's okay. We're fine doing this. And it doesn't put up that resistance. But our brain is not set up to make us win. It's not set up to make us feel good. It's not set up to make us succeed. It's set up to survive. And now, later in evolution, we have all kinds of goals with our brain. And one of them is to feel good. But the machinery is not wired that way. So we have to work within the system to get it to work.
We're going to take a quick break. One hard-learned lesson I've learned over the past 12 years is that the more you can automate in your business, the more mental energy you have left over to be creative. That's why I'm glad to have HoneyBook sponsoring the show. HoneyBook is an online business management tool. Now, what does that mean? I'll tell you what that means. HoneyBook organizes all of your client communications, bookings, contracts, and invoices. It even integrates with the services you already use like Gmail, QuickBooks, and Google Calendar. It puts everything in one place. It saves you a ton of mental energy. Best of all, HoneyBook can automate your business processes. You can automate things like appointment requests, follow-ups, and thank yous when things happen in your business. And right now, HoneyBook is offering our listeners 50% off when you visit honeybook.com/loveyourwork. Payment is flexible, and this promotion applies whether you pay monthly or annually. Go to honeybook.com/loveyourwork for 50% off your first year. That is honeybook.com/loveyourwork. Do you have any successful hacks for yourself that you've been able to motivate yourself into doing something that you had trouble with at first?
So I have something called the When Life Works list. And it's a series of 16 self-care rituals. And if I pick out 4 of them a day and do just 4 of the 16, I'm able to have a great day. My insecurities are kept that day. I feel very proud of myself. I feel like I have value. When I'm not on my When Life Works list, I'm on another list I call the When Life Sucks list, where I'm doing all the things that life sucks when I'm doing them, like just mindlessly eating, binging on recreational entertainment, things that in and of themselves might not be the end of the world. But when you start stacking them and not doing the things that make your life run smoothly, things start to get bumpy. I love the quote, life is easy when you do it the hard way and hard when you do it the easy way.
So what's on your When Life Works list?
So there are things like staying hydrated, exercise, meditate, spend time with my spouse, spend time with my niece and my nephews, be out in nature, connecting to my mentors, connecting to my apprentices, creating content, on social media, podcasts such as this, reading things that inspire me or watching inspiring, thought-provoking materials. And I change out some of my activities if I just find there's something new and exciting that I'd rather add. But I've been teaching this concept about everybody needs a When Life Works list, and it needs to be printed in their office and in their car or in their home or in their wallet or on their phone, somewhere we can see it. Because if you're not thinking about it, out of sight, out of mind, and you want your activities on your When Life Works list to be ingrained in your daily life, because the When Life Works list is the only proven thing that I've found that keeps your insecurities at bay. All the other little techniques and tricks and psychological hacks don't withstand the test of time like staying on your When Life Works list.
I love this because I find that I sometimes have difficulty getting myself to do things that I actually enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a hack that I tried several years back where I would take jelly beans and I'd have a little piece of paper with some circles on it. One was for every day, every week, every month, every year. And I'd color code the jelly beans and I'd put them in a little circle like a pill, like a prescription. So like I found I really loved to go hiking, but to go hiking I'd have to rent a zip car and drive and plan the hike and all that stuff. And there would be all these things in place that would prevent me from going hiking. But if I told myself, well, I can at least afford the zip car or the time and all that twice a month to go hiking. That's how much I need to enjoy it. So I put the 2 green jelly beans in the month circle. And as I do my weekly review, I'd find, oh, well, there's 2 green jelly beans and I need to plan a hike.
Yeah. Well, and that's when you were a kid, you probably remember those stickers that the teachers would give you, and you maybe put them in your calendar or you would get them in your day planner or whatever. And every time you did your homework, you got a sticker, and the brain loves those rewards. It's gamifying our When Life Works list.
We got Pizza Hut personal pan pizzas for reading. I mean, you and I are 1 day apart in age, by the way. So,
are you 4th or 6th?
I'm May 4th. So respect your elders.
Yes, absolutely. 1979.
1979.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
same generation.
You were around for the book it, and you would get your stickers. And then after you got a certain number of stickers, you got a personal pan pizza. Yep, I remember that.
I was also around for Dare.
Yeah.
It was like drugs. I didn't even, what you're telling me not to do drugs. I didn't even know about that drugs existed. What are you talking about? That program apparently didn't work. But so it's important to be able to see insecurities in yourself. But when somebody else is insecure, or actually, you walked us through how to beat limiting beliefs when it applies to yourself, right? Okay. And when you're dealing with somebody else, though, then there's another factor in there, right? You can tell yourself these stories.
Sure.
Just like you were talking about telling yourself a story about maybe not being good at marketing. Now you can tell yourself a story about other people, like, oh, this coworker doesn't like me because he made a weird face.
Right.
And it turns out, oh, he had this, like, the stomach flu that day, and you didn't know, right?
Yeah. So is there a question buried in that one?
Oh, sorry. So how do you deal with preventing from telling yourself stories when there's other people involved besides just telling stories about yourself?
Well, I love Don Miguel Ruiz. He wrote the book, The 4 Agreements. And one of them is don't make any assumptions, because you don't know what's generating somebody's behavior. And even if they claim that you were the bane of their existence, and they point the finger and they say, you're why they're fill in the blank behavior, that's not even true. Everybody is reacting in their own life based on their own internal world. And so you're not responsible for how other people feel. You are responsible for how you carry yourself. And some people are going to align with how you choose to carry yourself. And some people, it's going to trigger them because either they have envy or they see an aspect of themselves that they don't like or whatever, and they're going to react whatever way they're going to react. And it's not about you. It's about them. It's about their stuff. It's about their issues. And it's hard when we're not on our When Life Works list, on our When Life Sucks list. Our insecurities are already stirred up. And then we come across somebody whose insecurities are stirred up inside of them. And then you get into a wrestling match. And I found that people who are miserable would rather spread the misery out on others than have to continue to carry it themselves. So that's why they're looking for fights. That's why they look to go off on somebody in traffic. That's why they look to go off on somebody in the grocery store or whatever it may be, because they would rather wrestle with an external opponent than to continue to wrestle with themselves.
This ties in perfectly, I think, to like online trolls. And I think anybody who creates anything, who blogs or puts themselves out there, and they're just starting, that's one of the big fears they have. Someday they're going to get an angry comment and somebody's going to tell them that they suck. But as somebody who has been publishing things for a while and have gotten a little bit of that, every once in a while I get some feedback that's really helpful. But also there is, who wakes up in the morning and says, I'm so grateful for this day on earth, and now I'm going to go on the internet and have arguments with people and tell them that you have to have some empathy for those people because their life is not going well. They're not in a good place.
Yeah, well, I just did a whole program on cyberbullying, and I can tell you that bullying has always existed. Specifically amongst kids, bullies would happen on the playground. Now they happen on the keyboard and the playground. But human beings, when we don't feel like we're enough, we sometimes will go to the inferior or to the superior complexes. And bullying is the superior complex. It's trying to generate some kind of strength and power through intimidation, through causing fear in others, through beating somebody down energetically. But it's also a reflection of they're not up to big things in their own life. I've never found a bully that was doing amazing things with their life. You just won't find them because they're too busy doing amazing things. Successful, happy, well, emotionally balanced people don't have time to shit on somebody else. They don't have time for that, to go on and be a keyboard jockey. You know who does? It's the guy who's in his basement and he's living with mom and he hasn't got a girlfriend and he's mad at himself. He feels pathetic and he doesn't know if he's going to die lonely, and all he looks forward to is his pornography and his video games. And then he goes online and sees a video about a little man in a wheelchair who's loving life, and it pisses him off. It pisses him off because he's like, what's wrong with me that little dude in a wheelchair is happier than I am? You know what? I don't like how this guy makes me feel. He's making me look bad. I need to come after him. I need to say that his wife must be a prostitute, or that he must not have the right credentials, or that he's just trying to be a snake oil salesman and sell garbage. Whatever. They try and go after whatever they think could get a rise out of me. And I find that if the haters, doubters, trolls, bullies out there in the world, if they can get to me, meaning if they can say something that gets a rise out of me, that's not about them. That's about me. It's because I haven't done enough auditing on myself to find where am I feeling like I'm not enough. Because if they can't activate me, that means I've done a great job of self-auditing and correcting. And, I can tell you, I've gone online and I've looked at some of my videos and read the comments. Sometimes I'll see a really mean comment and it doesn't faze me at all. And sometimes I'll read a really mean comment and it'll really just get stuck in my skin and cause problems. And it's because on that day, I wasn't on my When Life Works list. That day, I wasn't self-auditing. I wasn't working on my journaling. I wasn't connecting to a higher source or a purpose to my life. And when we are coming from low vibrations can impact us tremendously.
And on the flip side, sometimes people, they see you and they see your talk and they're totally inspired and you're able to change them.
That's the goal.
And I mean, that's the way that it feels when I watch like your TEDx talk in the prison. How did you discover that you had that power? You talked about a mentor that guided you.
Yeah, I've had lots of mentors that have guided me. My earliest mentors were my parents. My parents they helped to shape a lot of my values. I'm super grateful for them for that. Then as I got older, I was mentored by Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer. I was mentored by Deepak Chopra. And some people, when I would be mentored, I would just mean I would read their books. Some people I actually became friends with and learned from them in person. And then in business, I continued people like Joe Polish and Dean Graziosi and Eben Pagan and these individuals that were of tremendous value in providing insights to how do you grow your business. And then I had mentors in health and mentors in relationships. And I've developed into the man that I am, and I'm developing into the man. Anytime I'm overwhelmed and not happy, it's because I'm obsessed with some kind of achievement that has yet to appear. And anytime I'm in a blissful state, it's because I'm committed to the development of myself and not trying to compare myself to past versions of myself or versions of other people, but just getting excited about the true development of my character. That's where the power has really come from, is turning down the noise about what other people are saying, what other people think about me, and really trying to figure out who am I becoming and what kind of man do I want to be on this planet for Mindy, my wife, my family, my friends, people that follow me online, read my books, is who do I want to be? Not what do I want to have and achieve? Because have and achieve is never enough.
So what was there a point at which you discovered that, out of all the things that I could do with my life and with my days, that this is this thing that I have a gift for?
Well, the gifts have been evolving, really. I started speaking when I was an early teenager, and I was asked to speak to a school about what it was like to have a disability. And then that grew to speaking to hospitals, and then that grew to speaking to companies and conferences. And then it grew out of not just talking about disabilities, but confidence and love and success. And then as I got more training in psychology, dealing with self-sabotage, insecurities, health rituals. And so the speaking has developed over 23 years. My therapy background of being a psychotherapist, that's developed for the past 17 years. I've written a few books in my day, and I wouldn't really consider myself to be a writer. I would consider myself to be an author because I'm already published, but I don't really associate to being a writer. Writing is more of a necessary evil for me. It's something I'm willing to do. It's okay. I don't get the buzz off of it like I do being on stage. I love the live feedback. I love watching faces change as my stories change, as my mannerisms change, their mannerisms. I love that feedback loop that I don't get when I'm just being a writer. So the power and the talents and the things that I just shared with you, they've come over time. You know, I passed 10,000 hours a long time ago, and it feels like in some spaces, though, that I'm just getting started. You know, the more I study about the unconscious mind, the more I realize I have so much more to learn.
You were saying earlier that wherever you go, people are looking at you, or you said in your TEDx talk in the prison that people look at you and say, it must be so hard to be that man. And I think that that's actually part of what gives you this sort of judo power in helping people stop using self-pity as a tool. Do you agree with that? And was that a difficult thing to come to terms with yourself or to discover yourself?
Well, I definitely use the power of my appearance and what people assume about me. I use that to my benefit because when I start revealing my life and my attitude, it it takes them in a totally different direction. And that gives me a tremendous amount of leverage in helping influence change in a person. Um, it took time to realize that I had this gift. I saw it at a young age, though, but I continued to develop it over time. And I never wanted to abuse the power and become cliche, like, look at my life and look at everything I've done. And golly gee, if Sean Stephenson can do it, so can you. I never wanted to take a weak perspective that was like just a traditional disabled speaker that says, look, I ran a race and I finished. I didn't win, but I
Then you'd be
finished.
falling victim to the exact same things that we were talking about earlier about telling yourself a story. You'd kind of be making assumptions about the people that you're talking to. Like in the speech in the jail, you kind of start off with, I don't know how hard your life has been, because you don't, right? But still, you're able to get that leverage, as you were saying, to totally flip them around.
Well, when I show up and I say, I don't know how hard your life is, it's shocking to people because they are assuming I'm going to come in with the attitude of, I've had a harder life than you. You know, I've had this disability and poor me. But when I don't pull that card on any crowd, let alone a prison setting crowd, I think it puts people in a position where they want to open up and they want to hear more and they're open to listening and learning because I'm not falling into the traditional cliches of a motivational speaker.
Yeah, it is such a powerful talk. And you are able to, I think, disarm them by letting them know that you don't know what their life is like, which is true for everybody, right? And you've had a lot of things in your life that have been fantastic, right? Like your parents are amazing people. I've seen, from what I've seen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's all that we ever know about anybody else's story is.
We don't want to make any assumptions that we know what another person's going through. You don't even want to make the assumptions about the people closest to you, what they must be going through, because you're not inside of them. You're not inside of their dreams at night. You're not inside of their daily thoughts each day. You're not inside of their fears and their dreams. And so you don't want to make any assumptions. And my goal is always to develop rapport, to build that invisible bond between somebody else's heart and mind. And as I develop that rapport, they will give me more leniency. They'll be more lenient in my ability to challenge them. If they have rapport with me, I can pretty much do or say whatever is necessary to encourage them to take bigger chances with their, bigger leaps with their dreams and play bigger in their life. And when you have that rapport, when somebody feels that you respect them and that they can trust you, you can really push on them more. When they don't feel respected, when they don't feel like they can trust you, they're not going to let you in. They're not going to expose vulnerabilities to you. They're not going to share personal things that might make them look bad. But that's why my number one goal is to develop rapport with people, whether it's one-on-one or with crowds of thousands. How can I develop the rapport? Quickest way is to share my own insecurities, to disarm them through letting them know where I'm weak, what I struggle with, my fears are. And as I share these things, it disarms them and then gives them the ability to say, oh, well, I guess I'm not that much different than him. You want the person to come to the realization that they're not much different than you, as opposed to coming at them and saying, you and I are alike. I know exactly what you're going through. You want them to draw those conclusions.
And this can be useful in so many different contexts. When anytime there's any sort of a relationship going on, this can be useful in marketing.
Oh, definitely.
So we talked about a ton of interesting things today about insecurity and actual methods to identify it and steps you can actually take to make your life enjoyable and break down insecurity. Now, do you have a final message to sum up our conversation today?
I would say there's always going to be pain. There's pain on both sides of the fence. There's pain from neglecting things, and then there's pain on the side of growth where you actually work on it. You can't avoid pain in life. You should choose the pain on the side of growth. It's some pain to get in the gym and work out. It's some pain sometimes to eat healthier foods. It's a pain to work on a business sometimes and to develop your customer base. It's not easy, but I'd rather have a body that was supporting me, a business that was supporting me, a mindset that was supporting me. I'd rather be on the side of growth and that kind of pain than on the side of avoidance and abuse, self-abuse and neglect. So as you're listening to this program, just ask yourself, how much growth pain are you going through right now? And if you're going through growth pain, just keep going. It will get easier, but you got to figure out what side do you want to be on.
It's been such a huge pleasure having you on today, and I think that you're going to have a lot of new fans from this. Where can they find more of you?
Well, I'll give you two websites. One is to follow me on Facebook. Go to SeanStephenson.live. That's SeanStephenson.live. That'll take you straight to my fan page. I post several times a day. And then I would recommend you get my ebook, How to Stay Positive When Life Gets Crazy. And you can get that at staypositive.club. .club. And if you get that ebook, you also get the audiobook, 3 videos, and a couple other bonuses. So you might want to check that out at staypositive.club.
And there's also a free gift available for all the listeners here at SeanStephenson.com/loveyourwork, which Sean Stephenson, you just heard out, was spelled SEAN and then PH, not VE.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Sean.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Is Love Your Work helping you find your unique creative voice? Does it bring you the inspiration and motivation you need to become the creator and human you want to be? If so, please be a part of making this a special and nourishing and thoughtful show. Support the show on Patreon. You'll be an even bigger part of this show than you already are. If you contribute just a coffee a month, you'll be helping support the hosting and production of Love Your Work. Everyone has some unique creative gift to offer the world. Together, we can give people the tools they need to bring that work into the world. The world will be better off for it. Visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/Cadavy. This is a different kind of model for supporting the work that you love. The choice is yours. Vote with your dollars, put your money where your mind is, and keep Love Your Work going. Visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/Cadavy. As a thank you, you'll get early access, bonus content, and a discount on Love Your Work merchandise. Learn more at patreon.com/Cadavy. That's patreon.com/KA, D as in David, A, V as in Victor, Y. And if you can't support the show financially, and you've listened to at least 3 episodes, can you do me a favor? Write a review on Apple Podcasts. You can consider it your donation to help support the show. Love Your Work is brought to you in part by our top Patreon supporters, such as Jeffrey Mason. This has been Love Your Work, and I'm David Cadavy. The theme music for this show is At Sea by Dorena from the album About Everything and More by arrangement with Deep Elm Records at deepelm.com. Love Your Work is a production of Cadavy, Inc.